Priya Hunt, an executive coach whose mission is to inspire leaders like you to thrive and make an even bigger impact. Welcome to Ideasparks. This is a discussion focused on a leadership topic to spark some ideas in us by talking to people who bring their really varied and interesting perspectives to the subject.
Doing a master's degree, particularly a bit later in life, can be a challenge in many ways. I have the privilege of talking to three people that I've had the honor of graduating with. Edina, Kat, and Gary, welcome. I know we've all had very different approaches to our studies, and I'm really excited to have a conversation with you, hoping to spark some ideas in anyone who's considering doing a master's or is already doing a master's or considering any other further studies. So without much ado, can I please invite you to introduce yourselves? Do tell us about what made you take up an MSc when you did. And I'm going to start us off with Gary.
Thanks, Priya, and fantastic to be here. I am a global marketing director at a spirits company, and I have always led quite big teams. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do a coaching degree was because I have interactions with teams that are remotely based or in the same office as me, and I often thought that I knew a bit about mentoring, a bit about coaching, a bit about management and leadership, but didn't really have the formal tools, techniques, and some of the science behind it. So that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to do a master's in coaching and behavioural change. The other reason was about 10 years ago, I was coached myself, and that was with the objective of trying to get a bigger job. And it had a profound experience based on the things I did with that coach and how much they pushed and challenged and supported me. So I thought maybe I could do the same for unlocking other people's potential.
Fantastic. Lovely. Welcome. Kat, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Priya. So I I'm now an executive performance coach. When I started the Masters, I'd done a lot of work in big transformation projects and big change projects. So I'd had a lot of experience of coaching at work as part of my job. But what I really wanted to do was make sure that I had some sound academic underpinnings, because there's a lot out there which is pop science and doesn't really have much of a basis to it. So I wanted to make sure that as I kind of stepped into this practice of working with clients on a one-to-one basis outside of having a full-time job, that what I was doing was working with them with sound academic practice. So as I said, now I'm an executive performance coach. I work with everything from excelling in your chosen field to navigating burnout. And at the moment, I seem to be having a lot of conversations about what people really want to do, which probably brings me full circle to, why I started this in the first place, is because it really gave me that springboard to do what I really wanted to do.
Great to have you on board. Thank you. And Edina, last but not least.
Yeah, thanks, Priya. So basically, I have a very similar background like Gary. I was 20 years in FMCG marketing in different leadership roles, actually for the past 15 years. And there was a time when I felt that even though I really love marketing, I love my job, but what I love most is to work with my people, to develop the individuals, to develop the teams. And I felt that I needed a change, and the pandemic came and I felt that, okay, this is now or never. So I started a consultant, marketing consultant role part-time. So I had some time, and I wanted to find an education. And at that time, there were so many courses, be a coach in 2 weeks for €100. And I felt that this is not for me. If I do it, I want to find what is the best out there. And that's how I got recommended Henley, and I started.
Excellent. And I'm really glad all three of you chose Henley as well, because that's where I chose to study. And it has been such a joy working with you through this period. So coming back to that, Gary, I'm going to start us off with a question for you. Tell me a bit about how you approached your studies.
We can't underestimate how big an undertaking it is to do a full-time role, be part of a family, and also do a master's at Henley. And I mean, whether I went into it with this mindset or it just evolved as I went, but there was various things that I just found suited me. So one example is really, really early mornings. It was actually thanks to one of the early modules on neuroscience where they talked about really understanding yourself and when your brain power is most active and when you can feel like when you can get into things like flow and get lots of work done, that could be the right moment to do really deep work. And for me, I know it's not for everyone, 5:30 in the morning, couple of hours, like no one's around, no disruption, really, really quiet, and getting a couple of hours under my belt before I started a busy day at work just suited me. There was also a couple of other workarounds. I found some of the scientific papers quite heavy, quite dense to read, but I found an app called Speechify, which is designed for dyslexic people, that you can upload PDFs and listen to them through your phone. So I'd listen to, I live about an hour away from the office, so I could listen to a scientific article in the car and take some of it on board, and it felt a bit easier to read it than the next time as well. So the other big one was asking for help. Like when you're in a cohort with people like yourself, Kat and Edina, what you quickly find out is some people really get certain topics that you're studying, and maybe you struggle with them, and you have a chat over lunch, and the stuff that was hard to understand in a lecture theatre suddenly becomes a bit more comprehensible, and then it happens the other way. There's certain subjects you're more comfortable with. So there were a few of the things that suited me, whether they were designed or they emerged, probably a bit of both, and that's how I made it work.
Fantastic. And I know you've been very consistent with that as well. And I know everyone isn't necessarily. So Edina, I'd be very curious, and then Kat, maybe yourself as well, as to, what was different about the way you approached your studies?
I mean, when I started, I was still working part-time, so that was quite fine. But after a year, I actually started a new career and a full-time new job. So then it was really increasingly difficult to follow the studies. So I basically gave up my weekends. I was so tired every evening, so that was not an option for me, mornings neither. So I actually woke up on a Saturday and Sunday, and I sat down and I basically literally gave up my holidays and my weekends. So that was tough. I mean, for me, what helped is that I just took one day at a time, because if I thought about all the assignments that were still coming, then I could have given up. But I only focused always on the next step, and that kind of saved me from actually quitting.
Excellent point. And Kat, anything to add?
Yeah, so I think there's probably two things there. I think Edina referenced it when she said that halfway through she'd completely changed careers. The size of this shouldn't be underestimated. This was a 3-year program, so that's a lot of your life that's taken up by the MSc. So for me, how did I approach it? I am the queen of deadlines. I absolutely need a deadline in order to focus, because for me, otherwise, there's just so much in terms of the possibility of, especially when you're looking at assignments, where can you explore, or rabbit holes that you can fall down. So the way that I did it was very much, Henley's brilliant because the workshops are all in person and face to face. So as Gary said, you can have conversations with people over lunch, and in the breaks and in the bar in the evening. And so for me, it was always about making sure that I tried to understand as much as I could whilst I was at the workshop, so I didn't leave with any big open questions. And then I'd almost just let my brain work in the background and put the pieces of the jigsaw together whilst I was, doing my day job or other bits and pieces. And then it would tend to be, I knew that I needed a deadline to write my assignments. So I would probably work back from when it was due in, make sure that week before, that's when I'd kind of, any big things that I would move out the way so that I had as much time as I needed to do the work then. There were many times where I tried to emulate the likes of yourself and Gary, who, I don't know how you did it, but always had things handed in early and all the rest of it. And I'll be really honest with you, my attempts would be, read a couple of papers the day after the workshop, pat myself on the back for starting early, and then inevitably that would all get put to one side, and then the deadline would loom and I'd kick into gear again. So I suppose it's horses for courses, isn't it, really?
What was the most exciting and satisfying part of the MSc for you, Kat?
So like every good management consultant, for me, there's three things, because we can't do things that aren't in threes. So for the first one, I think I thoroughly enjoyed doing my dissertation. For me, that was the opportunity to go and explore whichever area we were most passionate and excited by. I probably sailed fairly close to the edge of the line in terms of relevancy to the topic, because I very much focused mine on performance and improving team performance rather than necessarily a true coaching topic, because mine wasn't just about coaching. But just having the opportunity to do that was fabulous, and just lose yourself in, you know, a topic of your choosing. For me, the second thing was the experts that we had at Henley were just phenomenal. I think for me, whilst every single person who we had come and lecture us was brilliant, I think the two that stand out for me were Peter Hawkins, who did systemic team coaching with us, and Fiona Coffey, who did Gestalt coaching. They were just, they had this ability to change your perspective, and just kind of be totally absorbed by what they were saying and how they were practicing. And for me, the third and final thing is just the friends that I've made along the way. You know, it's, as I said, you know, in the last thing, this is a huge undertaking for 3 years, and you absolutely need everyone in your corner along the way, and you to be in other people's corners as you go through this. And yeah, for me, the fabulous cohort that we had, and I'm sure everyone says this, that, you know, everyone who goes through it, each cohort says the same thing, but that really did make the difference on this program.
How lovely. Edina, coming to the other side of it though, what did you find the most challenging part of your journey?
How much time do we have for this?
Not very much, so a really short one.
Because I can go on really for really long. But basically, I would say that I actually have 2 other masters that I did before 2000. And now we are in 2023, so 20 years later. I think to study, you know, at this age, even though we are very, very young, it's still quite challenging. As I said, I started a new career, a new job, full-time job, and it was extremely difficult to manage that, plus do a master's of such caliber. And of course, academic writing. For me, this was really, really, it really pushed me out of my comfort zone, almost into the panic zone. It was really, really tough for me, I have to admit. And let's face it, I'm not a native English speaker. So to do that in a language that is not my native language, that was really, really, really tough. And also what was quite challenging is that the first 2 years I was a hybrid participant, and it was quite tough when I saw all the people that I just knew from the screen, and I still felt very close to them. And then they went for lunch, having fun and sending pictures, you know, about different activities. And I was sitting at home in front of the computer the whole day. And actually, it was quite lonely to do that. And actually, loneliness came back in my dissertation. This feeling that I felt being a hybrid participant really inspired my dissertation.
Fantastic. I mean, this is the amazing thing about dissertation, as you mentioned, Kat, isn't it? That we could explore what really resonated with us. And Gary, building on that, you know, how did you deal with your challenge, especially when you were at your lowest ebb on this journey?
Well, I think the lowest I got actually happened relatively early on in the MSc, because to get onto the MSc at Henley, you have to do the professional certificate in executive coaching beforehand, which is very, very practical. Lots of coaching practice, really enjoyed that. Theory practice. And then the first assignment I did on the MSc, actually, I thought I'd done a really good piece of work, but I literally scraped a pass. And I remember just that feeling like quite a low point. So I remember getting the result. It wasn't aligned to what I expected. And I hadn't cracked the code of writing an academic assignment. And it really made me think. And I remember going through a 48-hour period of thinking, have I done the right thing? Was a science degree the right thing to do? And I asked a couple of people about it, and they were like, just remember, one of the reasons you're doing this is to be a great coach and to be useful to people. And actually, it goes beyond the academia as well, which helped. It didn't solve it, but I went again and persevered and somehow cracked the code. But that was a pretty low point where you kind of think, have I done the right thing?
It's really interesting. And for someone who I know did really well on the future assignments, I think that would have been even more intriguing at the beginning. So completely understand that. Kat and Edina talked about the dissertation. I don't know whether, I know that the dissertation space is very different from the rest of the MSc. I'd be quite curious to hear from any of you on, Kat, you obviously really enjoyed that. Did anyone not like the dissertation as much as the rest of the MSc, or what are your thoughts?
I think what was great with the dissertation is that we could pick the topic, and basically my advice would be to anyone to pick a topic that you are really, really passionate about, because to kind of research and write about something for 9-10 months is that you are not interested in, that's really, really, really tough. So
Thank you.
I totally agree with that. And it's a little bit like, when you go through school and you've got to do all the subjects school say you've got to do, and then you get your options and you start to narrow down. I think the dissertation is a bit like that. You get to pick a passion point, and also it's real. You do your own research. And I remember when Henley were teeing that up maybe a year before, and you start to hear people talk about, the dissertation, you've got to do your own research. I remember feeling quite intimidated by that, thinking, do your own research. Like, how do you even do that? And then I think you do get really sucked in, and you end up being able to pick something which is an inch wide but a mile deep, and really develop an expertise in something which can be on something that you really find very interesting in the first couple of years.
That's a very nice way of putting it, isn't it? Inch wide and mile deep, and you're totally right there.
Just to add on to that, I'd say the biggest thing that I learned actually in my undergrad, which talks to the bit about it being a passion project and that inch wide, mile deep, is that if you get that inch, half an inch off, it can actually be a really painful process. And when I did my undergrad dissertation, broadly, I did the topic that I wanted to do, but my supervisor just nudged me in a direction that I didn't quite have the same passion in. And when I first spoke to my supervisor about my MSc dissertation, and Priya, you and I had the same supervisor, and we were both very lucky with who we had, and he got really excited about the topic and kind of started to talk about it in a slightly different direction. And I think, just that bit of maturity that I've got 10 years further down the line between doing my undergrad and now, I was able, rather than going, the teacher said that, I need to follow what the teacher has said, I sort of went, yeah, get it, can see how that's also really interesting, but what I want to do is this in this direction over here for these reasons. And instantly he just went, oh yeah, I totally get that, and away we went in that direction. And I suppose for me, that's the one bit of advice I would give to anyone, no matter what level you're doing dissertation at, whether it's undergrad, masters, or even a PhD. It's making sure that your supervisor, they're there to partner with you, but ultimately it's your piece of work. And so just make sure that it really is the right topic that you want, not something that they've kind of just slightly shaped only out of their own enthusiasm, but slightly away from where you want to go.
Great piece of advice. Thank you for that. And sort of building on to that, is that the deepest insight you got from your MSc journey, Kat. How do you plan to take this learning forward?
So I think for me, the deepest insight was the importance and I suppose benefit of reflection and self-reflection. So, you know, for each of our modules, we had an assignment to hand in afterwards, and it was 2,500 words was a critical academic essay on the topic, and 2,500 words was a critical reflection on the topic. So kind of our own reflections and thoughts and how we had experienced the topic. And I think for me, I really enjoyed those essays, but I am not someone who journals. I'm not someone who I've never been a person who keeps a diary or anything like that. So for me, the forcing function, I suppose, that those essays gave me was really valuable. So what I now need to do is figure out how I bring that, now that I don't have the structure of a looming deadline, to kind of do some more regular self-reflection. But for me, you know, and I've spoken to other people who have done other courses with Henley, not just the coaching, but their leadership studies courses. And that's certainly a big theme across a lot of the Henley courses. And the power of it is phenomenal. Just need to put it into practice a bit more.
Yeah. And Edina and Gary, anything you'd add about the deepest insight you took away from the MSc for yourselves?
I think it builds on what Kat mentioned, which is really important about self-reflection. Is I just remember early on in the course, I think it was Alison Hardingham saying, like, your level of self-reflection and your level of self-awareness has to go to places that you would then expect to take a coachee or a client to. And you know, sometimes just things just stick in your mind and you think, okay, well that's interesting, because if you're going to help someone unlock their own potential or deepen their own level of awareness, then you've got to go to places yourself. And on a course like the MSc at Henley, you do certainly you do. I found out things about myself I didn't know. I found out things about myself that I really liked. I found out some things about myself that I need to manage better. But I think those insights and that depth of self-reflection, the way that Kat's outlined as well, and the fact that we had to do it for every assignment, actually gives you more armory, and also will help us help other people get to that level as well.
For me, actually, one important insight was that I actually can do anything that I set my mind to. So if I'm honest, when I first looked at any of the briefs for the assignments, or not even mentioning dissertation, I felt that there is no way I can do this, and I could do it. So it made, I mean, it sounds a bit, maybe it's a bit strong word, but I felt a bit invincible when I handed in my dissertation.
Well done. I think you're right. It's like, I mean, we've all gone through a big journey, and if somebody's thinking about an MSc, it's worth knowing that it feels daunting at the beginning, but we can do it. You know, you can do it. And as we bring this to a close, I'd love each of you to share your top practical tip on how to navigate through the MSc along with everything else that's going on in life. So Edina, let me start off with you on that one.
Okay, so my absolutely number one tip is to create a support group. For me, after the first year, I wrote around in the group, is there anyone who would like to study together? I was so lucky that 6 amazing ladies said yes. And we actually studied together for 2 years. We met every single Sunday at 10 o'clock. We studied, we helped each other with inspiration, with ideas. And for me, I honestly feel that I couldn't have done it with the help of this strong community. So I would really, that would be my number one suggestion for anybody: create a group and support each other, because it will make things so much nicer, the journey so much nicer.
Fantastic. Gary, what do you think? What's your top tip?
I think very similar to Edina, ask for help, get support, make sure you're supported at home. If there's someone else at home, or if you've got a family at home, I'd say before embarking on something like this, make sure that they're up for it as much as you are. And frankly, I need more tickets than I get my hands on for graduation. The amount of people I asked for help during the course of the last 3 years, whether it's people proofreading assignments because I was getting too close to them and I wanted to make sure that they grammatically worked out, to asking people on the course what their opinion on certain things were, and swapping ideas and course lecturers. I think it is a massive undertaking, as Kat has pointed out, but it's so rewarding. But don't be afraid to ask for help.
Great tip. And Kat?
I think for me, it's really understand how you work best and lean into that rather than how you wish you worked. Because if you try to lean into how you wish you worked, because that would make your life a whole lot easier, you're just making it 10 times harder for you. Whereas if you just fully embrace, do you know what, I can't do things, you know, nice, neatly spaced out. I just need the last minute deadline rush. So therefore I'm going to clear my diary and make sure that I do that, you know, or vice versa, if you're someone like you or Gary. But fully lean into how you work best, I think, for me.
And I think you're spot on, and I'll probably agree with all the tips that you guys gave. And my tip from my journey itself is that it's your journey. It's so all 4 of us have done the same course in the same organization with the same professors teaching us, but we've all had a different journey because it's our journeys, and just enjoying that journey for what that journey is and enjoying the process. You know, coming back, it'll be remiss of me not to mention Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the man who inspired me through my research and dissertation. He talks about flow. It's when you enjoy the process as much as the outcome. So we've all have the graduation, which is the outcome to look forward to. But I think I'd be fair in saying that we all enjoyed the process just as much, even if we did find it challenging at times. Brilliant.
Definitely enjoyed it. Definitely enjoyed it. And to the points that Edina, Kat, yourself have made as well, a big part of that is the people you're with and how supportive they are as well. So yeah, it's a big part of it.
Brilliant. Gary, Edina, Kat, it's been a real privilege talking to you again about this. I'm sure people who are watching would find this really helpful, especially if they're considering further studies. So thank you so much for taking the time out. Bye-bye.
Thank you.